Hello, I'm Dr. Chris Parker, and in today's video, I'm going to give you an example satisfaction evaluation. Now, lots of what I'm showing you is going to be about quantitative work, so it relies on the previous videos I made about stats. So if you're not completely up to date on using statistics, go back and watch the previous videos on statistics. And I'm not showing you an example of a qualitative investigation, because that ties so closely with thematic analysis that I've already done the video. So go back and watch the previous videos about qualitative thematic analysis, and you'll see how to conduct and write up that kind of qualitative investigation. So let's get on with it and look at our example. So our example is next.co.uk. The design e-commerce leader wants to ensure their website is satisfying for consumers to use. The leader also wants the website to be more satisfying than the competition, which is Topshop. To do this, because it's a live website, well developed, we're using an SUS test. The stages we go through. First, you determine the required sample size. Then you collect user data. Then you calculate the SUS scores. Then once you've got the scores, you perform statistical analysis on your data. And then finally, you investigate individual scale scores. It's a 5-part process, and I'm going to walk through each of those in turn. Let's start with sample size. So we download G-star Power, and we know that we're looking for a medium effect size, a standard alpha of 0.05, a low power of 0.8 as the minimum threshold, and I'm going to have the same number of people in both groups. And I'm going to have unique people in each group, so it's an independent t-test. We're going to have 128 participants in two groups of 64. If you haven't seen G-star Power before, go back and look at my previous video about sample size and you'll be really clued in. Then you go and collect user data. So the UX design lead creates a Google Form survey and asks the SUS 10 questions to 128 customers who want to be involved in user testing. As we're working remotely, participants completed a set of tasks on the next website, which is find an outfit to wear to an interview and add to the cart, and then fill out the survey. So the questions are here, so I won't go over the SUS questions in detail because the previous video about quantitative satisfaction does that in a lot of detail, so go back and watch that video if you're not sure. Calculate SUS is very simple. We go through and just do different measures for odds and even numbers. We're looking for something above 70. So we've got our data, calculate our SUS scores. We want to know if our data is normal or non-normal. So we use a Commonwealth test using an online calculator, and it turns out our data is non-normal. That's okay, because we use the non-parametric statistics instead, and that is a Mann-Whitney U-test. Completely fine. We perform our Mann-Whitney U-test, and here's the result. There is a significant difference in the SUS scores between Next and Topshop. We see that Next is cruising at 60. It's okay, it's acceptable, but it's not actually satisfying. Whereas Topshop is making the users very satisfied at above 70. Significance is 0.02, which is good. Which means that we're confident there is a difference between the groups. We have a large sample size that we calculated before, so we don't need to do post hoc tests for non-parametrics. And we know that the effect size is small, which is with a low R number. A small effect size is actually quite good in this case, because even though our median score is much lower than Topshop and we are less satisfying, it's not that noticeable. So we don't have to be too worried about this. If it was a large effect size, then I would be quaking boots a bit and really hammering the UX design team to redesign the next website. So yeah, that's where things are. Topshop is scoring medium, which is 15 points above Next. So yeah, not too great. So let's go and find out where that is. So what we do then, well, now we know there's difference, we need to understand where the difference is. So what you could do is perform a whole load of individual SUS tests, see which one is significantly different. But because we just take a general approach at this point, I'm going to just look at the bar charts. And we can see that there's quite a few differences. These are the raw SUS scores. They haven't been converted into positive and negatives, so you've got to take it quite clearly. So, for example, frequency of use, higher is better. but complexity lower is better. So we can see that Next is just not performing as well as Topshop on every level. So we can really come to these conclusions that people don't want to use it as much, the website is more complex, it's harder to use, it requires more support, the functions aren't very well integrated with the website, it's harder to learn, users don't feel confident using the system, and there's a greater learning curve with the Next website. This suggests to me that to get a better experience, more satisfying experience from the Next website, the design team need to simplify the website. Maybe look at Topshop, see how they're using it, and follow their lead. Take out a few features. If there's a feature which isn't being used too much, then removing it could be a great way to simplify it, reduce those learning issues, and get to a better level of satisfaction. Of course, you're going to make a prototype, run that with a SUS score, and look what's happening. Then you're doing an A/B test, which is design 1, which we just tested, with the redesign, and see how the scores are different. Ideally, you'd use 128 people again to keep the same sample size. And that is an example run through of using SUS to interpret issues on a website. This is not the only way to do it. I would strongly advise anyone doing this to couple this with the qualitative methods of before and after interviews and during use think aloud to get a great explanation of what's going on and target the changes that need to be made.